Did you know that Lewis Hamilton's car was altered by Ferrari without him knowing, just before a key race? And that this detonated the anger of Fred Vasseur to the point of completely paralyzing an entire department within Maranello? Stay, because what you are about to discover goes far beyond a simple technical error. The situation began to crumble in silence during the Netherlands Grand Prix, but its real reach was only understood days later, when the technical reports arrived at Fred Vasseur's desk. Lewis Hamilton had suffered an accident in Zandvoort that, in the eyes of the public, might seem a consequence of a piloting error, a misunderstanding with the car, or even the changing conditions of the Dutch track. But what seemed like a simple isolated incident quickly transformed into a capital proportion scandal. In a team like Ferrari, where each parameter is regulated to the millimeter, each technical decision must go through multiple layers of approval. However, in this case, someone violated that protocol. In the early morning between the training of Friday and Saturday, critical technical modifications were applied to Hamilton's SF25 without knowledge of the pilot, his track engineer Riccardo Adami, or Vasseur's own. It was not a minor adjustment. It was a structural intervention that deeply altered the behavior of the car, without any justification from the operational point of view. The data showed that the rear of the car was reduced by 3 mm and the preload of the differential was increased. Although these figures may seem technical or insignificant for the outer eye, in modern Formula 1, those tenths of millimeter define whether a car is stable or uncontrollable. And for Hamilton, whose driving is based on the surgical precision of the rear axle, these changes transformed a car with which it was starting to feel comfortable into an indomitable monster. The pilot totally lost the reference of the car behavior and braking in turns, causing a complete disconnection between him and the machine. The psychological blow was immediate. It is not just that the car was difficult to drive, it is that Hamilton did not understand why he behaved that way. His telemetry showed inconsistencies, his style did not fit, and the track corrections multiplied. During the technical meetings of Saturday morning, the British expressed with growing frustration that the car felt alive in the rear, unpredictable, as if someone had changed something without telling him. But even at that time, no one inside the team seemed to have clear answers. When the technical report revealed the truth, Vasseur understood that it was not a simple error chain. This was a deliberate act of technical intervention without authorization. A group within Ferrari, the so-called Central Performance Group, had decided to alter key parameters of the car under the internal justification of a standard optimization. The problem was that this optimization was not registered, approved, or communicated to people directly involved in the operation of car number 44. The discovery was devastating. Not only because of the technical consequences, but for what it implied in terms of internal structure. What was revealed at that time was a much deeper symptom. A team that had begun to operate autonomy within its own hierarchy, breaking the chain of command and weakening the most fundamental principle of an F1 team, mutual trust. Ferrari not only faced a technical crisis. What I had in hand was an institutional crack. For the first time since its arrival, Vasseur saw at risk its management model, based on meritocracy, transparency, and respect for joint decisions. And for Hamilton, who had opted his final legacy to a long-term project with Ferrari, this initial betrayal could mark a before and after in his relationship with the rampant Cavallino. The revelation of clandestine modifications in Hamilton's car did not stay in a more internal conversation. For Fred Vasseur, it was a red line that could not cross without consequences. He barely confirmed what happened. His reaction was as fast as drastic. The immediate blockade of the Central Performance Group was ordered, leaving them without access to digital tools that allow adjusting the monoplace's configuration. It was an order that did not need to consult with anyone else. During the meeting, Hamilton remained on the sidelines. He did not attend, but made clear his position in a private conversation with Vasseur. This cannot happen again. I can't run without knowing if the car I have is the one we agreed. It was a short but forceful phrase. Hamilton did not demand punishments or renunciations. But his message had an implicit burden that Vasseur understood perfectly. Either the chain of trust is restored, or the link between the pilot and the Ferrari project will enter a point of no return. The most alarming thing for Vasseur was to discover that, in the technical culture of Ferrari, he had picked up a dangerous mentality. The idea that optimizing the car could justify any shortcut, even if that implied jumping protocols, ignoring the pilot, or making unilateral decisions with direct impact on security. That is the kind of mentality that can win a 10th in classification, but lose the confidence of a world champion pilot. And that, in Formula 1, is to lose much more than a race. It is losing the soul of an entire project. In the following days, Vasseur instructed a deep restructuring of the Ferrari internal control system. It was not just looking guilty, but redesigned from the base how technical decisions are made. New filters, mandatory traceability for each adjustment, and an inviolable rule. No critical change in a pilot's car can be implemented without a triple firm: that of the pilot, that of the career engineer, and that of the team director. A drastic but absolutely necessary measure to avoid repeating an episode that threatened to destroy from within what Ferrari had built since the beginning of the Vasseur era. The Hamilton car scandal not only undressed an ethical failure inside Ferrari, but also put on the table a problem that the team had been dragging since the start of the season: the unpredictable behavior of the SF25, a car that, although it is able to show gross speed, demands extremely delicate configurations to stay within the legal and competitive margin. Since the Australian Grand Prix, Maranello's engineers have been forced to face an easy-to-go-out-of-way technical paradox. So that the SF25 is truly fast, it needs to operate at a very low driving height, especially in the rear. This configuration maximizes aerodynamic load and grip in high-speed curves. However, that same configuration leads to the car to touch the technical limit of legality, in particular the wear of the reference skate, a fundamental component in the minimum height regulation by the FIA. In fact, in China, Lewis Hamilton was disqualified for this reason, which generated a silent scandal and a growing tension between engineers and those responsible for technical compliance. The temporary solution that Ferrari found was simply counterproductive: to raise driving height to avoid sanctions, but at the cost of losing aerodynamic performance. The car became less efficient, more nervous, and began to demand the pilots to apply more conservative management techniques, such as the lift and coast, raising the foot of the accelerator before the braking point to reduce vertical loads on the flat background. In simple terms, Ferrari was forcing to be slower so as not to be illegal. And that, in a category where the tenths of second define championships, is a sentence. To further complicate the situation, Ferrari implemented a great update in the rear suspension in the Belgium GP. This modification, designed to offer a broader adjustment range and allow the car to be more stable with greater height, failed in its objectives. The revised geometry introduced new variables in the balancing of the car, but did not solve the structural problem. The car continues to operate near the ground to be competitive, and any deviation from that optimal window makes it an unstable car, prone to flying or aerodynamic rebound in certain rapid curves. Within the equipment, this technical tension has begun to divide the departments. On the one hand, there are those that prioritize the rigorous compliance with the standards, defending more conservative configurations and looking for structural solutions in the medium term. On the other, there is a group, among them key figures of the Central Performance Group, that consider acceptable to take operational risks in order to keep the car in the maximum performance zone, although that implies living on the edge of disqualification. This philosophical shock is much deeper than it seems. It represents a real division between two Ferrari visions, one obsessed with normative perfection and another willing to play with the limits in search of immediate victories. And it is in this minute field where the Hamilton case becomes a dangerous spark. Because if someone within the second group saw in the British a test field to validate extreme configurations without informing or asking permission, that not only violated the pilot's trust, it was also a desperate maneuver to save the concept of SF25 as winning car, even if they had to cross lines that had never had to touch. This scandal has not only opened a crack between Hamilton and the team, he has exposed an awkward truth. Ferrari has not yet resolved who wants to be in this new era of Formula One. Does a modern, transparent, and coherent team like the one that Vasseur tries to build? Or a structure still prey to their old ghosts, where certain sectors act for free, looking for results at any price? The big question in the air is not only if Ferrari can solve this technical problem. The real question is whether Ferrari can change its organizational culture before it is too late. Because time in Formula One does not forgive. And while McLaren strengthens a model based on technical coherence and Red Bull seeks to reinvent itself after its fall, Ferrari continues to debate between tradition and transformation. And this is where you follow this sport every weekend, you enter the conversation. I want to know what you think. Do you think Ferrari is prepared to take that definitive step towards a more modern and professional culture? Or will these episodes continue to repeat again and again until even Hamilton's caliber pilots lose faith in the project?